If I were going to describe this, I would say something like this. Life comes quickly. Sometimes it's more fun than it is for others. About 10% of us statistically will simply drop dead one day. From strokes, heart attacks, accidents, things like that. Most of us fade away where we go through a period of mental and physical decay. I've spent my life working on trying to solve that last problem. But every now and then, we'll have somebody get a nasty gram from the doctor. And it's not that they're dying today, but they will look at you and say, Joe, you've got 3 to 6 months to live. Now, I understand there's a lot more to life than money. I get that. But I will tell you that our job is to protect your nest egg. Our job is to make sure that your wishes are passed on the way that you would want them on. And if a terminal illness arises in your family, there are things that you're going to want to consider. We're going to talk about that today on Consider This Program. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Soliven.
Grant is one of our senior advisors, has his degree in financial planning from Purdue University, what they consider to be the Ivy League in Texas.
Amen.
And actually, that is a true story. I had people tell me that, and I could not believe it. But yes, Purdue is deemed to be part of the Ivy League. So congratulations, Grant.
Thank you, sir.
You have to be in Texas to believe that.
Or California.
IU fans do not believe that Purdue grads are Ivy League, but that's okay. It is what it is, and we're happy to have you there. I was blessed for 7 years to be able to teach financial planning at Purdue University as an adjunct professor. Grant was one of my students, and I just happened to be smart enough to hire smart people. And so Grant and Jamie and Taylor and Andrew and Chris, is that all of you? There may be one more.
You said, yeah, I think there's
5 of you,
yeah.
Right? Out of the 38 people that are on the team.
Oh, Bo.
And Bo.
Bo.
As of the time of this recording,
Yeah.
all have degrees in financial planning from Purdue University,
Right.
and that part is exciting. We are talking about a subject that is exciting, but not happily, and it is that period of time that we go through. The theme of the show is the battle plan, so being prepared before things happen. Some of us just drop dead, about 10%. Most of us break down over the years from mental and physical decay until we finally pass of something. But there is those periods of time, and there's a good old country music song that says, live like you were dying, right? There is that period of time where you go to the doctor and the doctor says, I'm sorry, but nothing we can do, but you've got 3 to 6 months to live. There's a lot of things financially that you should be considering. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not top of mind, not top priority, but it is one of those things you want to have done. So we have 2 objectives at the Financial Enhancement Group. One is to make sure that you're prepared for that before it occurs.
Correct. That
you've got all of your I's dotted, T's crossed, and we know your plan, we know your financial vision, we know where you want to go. But the second part of that really is helping you sit down and say, okay, it is what it is. How do we make the most of this, right? How do we make lemonade out of lemons and go from there? So I'm going to let Grant walk you through some of the issues with terminal illness and some of the things that you need to consider.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you. And again, just to echo Joe, for all of you that have been in the service, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank your families for the sacrifice. One thing for those of us that understand the military lingo, right, the old adage, right, hurry up and wait. We always like to joke and laugh about that one. But the one that comes before that most often people don't think about and don't live by, if you're outside of the military, is prepare, modify, and prepare. And so Joe used the word exciting for terminal illness, and it's not in a good way, but it's exciting for us as planners because that's what we believe in. Prepare, modify, and prepare. And so when we look at terminal illness, right, the hardest part of dealing with that is when the emotion strikes. So you're sitting in the doctor's office, you get the news that we've got a terminal illness we have to deal with. Well, for some people, that's where the planning starts. And we don't want it to be for you. So if you have us and you're working with a fiduciary and a planner that's got this down, great, because now all you have to worry about is the emotional stress that comes with that situation. But if you haven't and you're just now starting to think about preparing and modifying and preparing, some things we want you to consider. The number one is, have you talked to your family members about what happens when that time arrives? Now, we get it, especially here in the Midwest. People don't like to talk about money, politics, religion, and we definitely don't like talking about death. It's something that's taboo. But something that we really hope that you prepare for along the way is, if I have someone who's listed in my estate documents or listed as beneficiaries, are they aware? And more importantly, are we having the appropriate conversations with them to make sure they're fully ready to take on the responsibility if something happens to you or something's going to happen to you? The other one, again, you're carrying this emotional baggage that comes with this news, this heavy weight of the news. And at the same time, you're also going to have this giant bag coming to you that's economic related. So unfortunately, if something happens, we have to consider taxation. Joe, I had I wouldn't call this individual a CPA, but one of our discussions with a group of people at a lecture, I had an old tax consultant look at me and say that families have 2 to 3 years to file a tax return after a spouse passes. And I had to look at this gentleman and say, I'm sorry, sir, the code changed over a decade ago, and now we only have 1 year. And so what I'm saying when I use that story to tell people, I'm saying be prepared ahead of time. Know what's changing. Know what laws have changed. Know what tax codes have changed. So you're prepared and not leaving a significant other behind because you're using old or bad data. So again, prepare, modify, and prepare.
It does happen. I did the Better Giver presentation at a church, and one of the CPAs said that you could have a carry forward gift indefinitely, kind of like you can use a carry forward loss, and that rule's changed too. It's a 5-year period of time. So people do get it wrong. So the one thing you said there that let's make sure people are clear.
Sure.
If you have minor children, you do actually have an extra year. So you have the year your spouse died and 1 more year. If you don't have minor children, let's say you're 65 years old and it's Christmas Eve and your spouse passes away, you have 7 days to do the rest of your tax planning as a married joint filed return. Next year, you're going to be a single individual. And we had a lady whose husband passed away, and she had to pay 53% more in taxes the next year simply because her husband passed away. What Grant's talking about is not minor. This is substantial. So you've got to be ready to go and on top of this, and you have a battle plan.
Mm-hmm. And continuing that, Joe, you're 100% right. What's part of the plan? Conversations are important. Understanding what's coming is important. But what does that plan look like? Well, one is to make sure your estate documents are prepared. In this specific instance, with a terminal illness, you want to make sure you have certain medical power of attorneys in place. So when you go into a medical facility and you're no longer able to care for yourself, who's doing that for you? This is often, Joe, one of the number one overlooked things when we talk with families, because when someone's not able to take care of themselves in a hospital setting, right, there's an academic way how it's supposed to be handled, and there's practice. So what doctors and hospitals actually do. So most people walk into a hospital, and we're recording here in the state of Indiana. You walk into a hospital in the Hoosier State, and let's say my wife, for example, she has a terminal illness, but she can no longer speak for herself. And I go in there, and I'm under the assumption that since I'm her husband, I get to make all the decisions. Well, actually, it's not the case here. Her next of kin has the same amount of authority as I do, and if there's a disagreement, even based on what I know my spouse's wishes are, sometimes in practice, the hospital will follow the law and actually not take my wishes. So make sure you have those medical powers of attorneys in place for yourself and for your family. The other big key is this. Joe's talked about checklists forever. Checklists. Make sure you have a checklist in place, and make sure you have resources or access to resources that you can look at and look into to make sure you're moving in the right direction. And again, as Joe talked about earlier in the show, we have checklists available for you. So how do I prepare? What are some things I need to be considering for preparing for a terminal illness or just preparing for anything in general? You can find all those checklists on our website.
And here's the deal, folks. What you will hopefully never have to go through, but the probability is one of the triggers and transitions that's not so nice. You will have to go through. You probably will have a loss of either a spouse or a parent. Hopefully not a child. Nobody should have to live through that. But I've taken care of more than 2,000 families in the last 33 years, and it's most of the stuff I've had to experience multiple times. And so we just made the decision 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, why have to reinvent? Why stop and think and reinvent a wheel every time something occurs? And so we just started documenting, what those processes are. So Grant and I will talk to you about what we call the 5 critical elements. It's our trademarked financial planning process. We start with your financial vision that says, here's where it is you want to go. And then we break it into the 5 areas that I think can most interrupt your financial success. One is yourlifeafterwork.com, or your life after work, what you're going to do when you separate from the workforce. The second is your annual tax plan. The third is the investment playbook, and we provide you the market carver every week with our thoughts on what's going on in the market and the economy. The fourth is life happens. It's what Grant's talking about right now. It's when those things come up and surprise you. And then the fifth is the legacy plan. How do you pass on more than just your money to the people that you want it to go to? And so whenever Grant sits down with you in a Next Steps meeting, or does a family update for one of our existing families, we're going to go through those 5 critical elements, make sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and we're ready to go. You don't have to do it every day, every week, every month, but once a year, it's worth sitting down and making sure that everything is as you intend it to be. And we have these checklists. I mean, I've got 2 people right now that have a terminal illness. It is what it is. So we sit down, we do the planning, we help them figure out what it is they need to be able to be thinking about, what it is they need to be doing to get the most financial, put their family in the best financial situation they can. And that's what the team's here for. So go to yourlifeafterwork.com, get signed up for your Next Steps meeting, get your battle plan ready. We'll give you 90 minutes complimentary to tell you things you need to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it into writing. Grant and the team will do the job, they'll give you the ideas, and you will know your battle plan is ready to go.